Americans to return to the moon.
Missions on the surface of the moon.
We are finally going back.
Return astronauts to the moon.
So we're going to the moon again. But why? I mean, don't get me wrong. As someone who has great childhood memories of going to the Kennedy Space Center, I'm absolutely thrilled that we get to witness humanity going to the moon again. But I have to admit, I never really stopped to think about why we're going there again. And why does it seem like it's not just the US?
China launched a rocket this morning carrying its first unmanned moon lander, the Jade.
Okay, for a bit of context, let's back things up a bit. The year is 1969 and the US is about to take their stab at winning the space race that was declared by President John F. Kennedy in 1961, when he mentioned that the US would set foot on the moon in that decade.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
And they did. The US achieved the unthinkable. We successfully got a human to take a step on the moon, something that seemed completely impossible up until that point. Even though Russia was technically the first one to reach the moon with their Luna program, NASA and the Apollo missions took the glory of claiming the first human landing. And it didn't stop there. They landed on the moon a total of 6 times, with the last one being in 1972. But why did we stop? Well, like many other great advancements in our history, this one was driven by political reasons. And after the US achieved a clear space superiority, it was deemed too expensive to continue the Apollo program. So NASA kind of shifted their focus to other missions, things like Skylab and like the Space Shuttle.
2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis to assemble the framework.
And just like that, we sort of moved on. Of course, this opened up a big opportunity for conspiracy theories to emerge and for people to come up with many versions of what happened on the moon and why we stopped going.
From the Y files was on, and he was the one that was telling us that there's photos, right, of the dark side of the moon, that someone had seen photos and was assuming that these would be released shortly, that there were structures. Wow, this is going to be the biggest news ever. And
fast forward 50 years and here we are again, with news of not just the US trying to get to the moon, but you have China and Russia working together to build a permanent moon base by the 2030s with their own nuclear reactor. South Korea has set the goal to have their own base by 2045. India, Japan, Europe, they all have eyes on the moon as well. So what has caused this sudden interest in the moon again? Well, I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that it's a combination of things, really. First, let's start with the biggest change in space exploration: private companies working on space travel. You see, up until recently, if the US wanted to send a human to space, they relied entirely on the government-funded agency NASA. However, that's no longer the case. I'm sure many of you have heard of SpaceX and Blue Origin by now, but I don't think it's very widely understood how big of a leap we've taken in space exploration because of those companies. You see, SpaceX's reusable Falcon 9 rocket, for example, cut launch costs by almost 90% compared to the shuttle era, and Blue Origin is developing its own heavy lift rocket with a lunar lander. This has made space exploration dramatically more affordable and practical for governments to plan long-term missions. And if you're still skeptical, that's fine. You don't have to believe me. Let me just show you a little graph here. This is the amount of space launches that we've had per year since the 1960s until 2014. And this is the amount of space launches after the reusable rockets became a thing. Yeah, it changed everything. But affordability is only one part of the story. This is where things get interesting. You see, the US is leading the Artemis program, which plans to return astronauts to the lunar surface by the mid-2020s and eventually establish a long-term presence in the South Pole. On top of that, they're building the Lunar Gateway, which is basically sort of a space station that will be orbiting the moon. And they have signed up 56 countries to the Artemis Accord. What do we have here? The Artemis Accords. What is this? The Artemis Accords provide a common set of principles to enhance the governance of the civil exploration and use of outer space. Guess that's okay. It's a good thing. That's a lot of countries. Huh. China and Russia are not there. Well, like I mentioned earlier, China and Russia are teaming up to create their own moon base. You see, they're usually not big fans of US-led policy, and they've mentioned that the Artemis Accords go against the 1967 Outer Space Treaty or the 1979 Moon Agreement, and this is where things start to get a little bit speculatory. Like anything else in politics, depending on your own personal views, you could choose to see things from one side or the other. But in the end, you can start to see the reality behind all of this. This isn't just about space exploration anymore, it's about influence. This is a space race that seems to be focused on who will get to write the rules on how we live and work beyond Earth. And they're using the moon as the battleground for it. Okay, so we have the fact that space exploration is cheaper than ever before, and we have geopolitics as a big motivator. Let's talk about what makes the moon so valuable. You see, the real prize is on the moon's south pole. Why? Back in 2009, the NASA mission confirmed the presence of water ice on the moon, a resource that is making this whole idea of a moon base entirely more plausible. On top of that, the moon's soil is packed with oxygen and metals and other elements that can be extracted, like helium-3, which is still not something we can use, but people are already thinking about it because of how it could be used in the future. The bottom line, the moon isn't just a floating rock to look at in our night sky anymore. It's strategic real estate. So how does all of this play out? Well, looking ahead, you got Artemis 2, the first crewed mission around the moon. It's currently scheduled for April of 2026, and then you have Artemis 3, with astronauts landing on the South Pole with a target date of 2027. China has missions for 2026 and 2028, and by the 2030s, the US and the Russia-China moon bases could both be operating on the surface. So this isn't some distant sci-fi timeline. This is happening now. So to summarize, why are we going again now? Because of three things happen all at once. Private companies made spaceflight cheaper, global politics turned the moon into the next battlegrounds, and science revealed that the moon's south pole could be a jackpot of resources. For the US, going back would be about proving leadership and building alliances. For China, it's probably about rising as a space superpower. For companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin, it's about building an infrastructure for future space economy. And for all of us, it's about witnessing how these countries set the stage for the future of humanity on space. Thank you for watching another episode of The Thinking Path. Until next time.